get started, and people can kind of jump in as they come in. Hi, I'm Cassandra here with Vocantis. Thanks for joining. This is a recorded session, so if you needed to hop out for any reason, or if any of your colleagues would like to receive the recording, it will be sent to you by the end of the day today, so you can share that out with anyone you'd like. And we will be doing a question period at the end of this webinar. So if you have any questions throughout it, please drop your questions right in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer it during the Q&A at the end. All right. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today, Melissa Tipton, Chief Experience Officer at Compass Business Solutions. Melissa is a visionary in rethinking the employee experience. She has worked in organizations in multiple industries, including in healthcare and technology. And she's going to provide her unique perspective and expertise on change management today. So I'll pass it over to you, Melissa.
Thank you. Excited to talk about things I'm passionate about. Change is inevitable in any industry that we are in. So how do we prepare ourselves? What do we think about when we talk about strategy behind change management? We can have a beautiful software that we're going to implement, or policies or procedures or anything new, but how do we gain the buy-in we need, both from an organization-wide, employee-wide, technology-wide, to be able to support that? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Understanding change management isn't just about the change. It's about ensuring that we have smooth transitions, that we're getting our employees on board. Employees are our greatest assets. We need to be able to leverage their expertise to really ensure that we have a good understanding of any change and implication that can have on our workforce. We'll talk about the need for change management. Without an effective strategy in place, it can lead to confusion, resistance, failure. We'll look at a real-world example that I have when I was supporting a healthcare system in implementing a system-wide HR technology change. We'll identify some key elements of change management. What are the crucial components needed to facilitate successful change? We'll cover aspects like communication, stakeholder engagement, training, all of these things that are vital to ensure that everyone is aligned, we're headed in the right direction, we're rowing our boat the same way at the same speed, and everyone is informed through the process. We'll talk about the benefits of successful change management. What happens when we do these things right? We are proactive in our approach. What kind of strategy do we need to make sure that we have good impact to the bottom line? Our employees are engaged. We're training our employees to be able to understand the change and then implement the change. As we move forward, think about your experience in change management, organizations that you've been in that have gotten it right, and maybe opportunities for improvement in other places where you're thinking, maybe if we would have done this a little differently, we could have had a different outcome. Let's get started. Change management is a structured approach to be able to transition individuals, teams, organizations from this current state where we identify there's a problem or a need for change into this desired future state. It involves applying tools, it involves processes, techniques to manage the people side of things so that we get the required business outcome. I worked in a multi-state healthcare system who had always prided itself on having, top of the line innovation when it came to patient care, cutting edge technology when it came to equipment. What was really lagging behind was their HR technology, their human resources, employee profiles, their ability to record time and attendance and scheduling, performance management, talent acquisition, all of those things that are crucial to be able to successfully support that employee experience. Their HR system was outdated, it was cumbersome, it was inefficient. There was no single source of truth when it came to data. It was all of these systems that did not integrate, that did not talk to each other. So pulling data, pulling support for questions was a manual process. And when people touch things multiple times, it creates room for error. So being a part of how do we effectively implement this beautiful system that will read each other, that will provide the support to enhance that employee experience from the talent acquisition to the onboarding through the employee life cycle. How do we bring the people together so that this is successful? We had a really supportive CEO that said, yes, I see the need for this upgrade. What do we need to do? Let's get to work. So our project was called Project Elevate. This was to replace the old system with a modern integrated HR technology platform that promised streamlining operations, enhanced employee experience, and supported the company's growth strategy, could provide the data that the business needed to make business operations decisions. When you think about change management, there's a couple different types of change. You have the incremental change. Those are just making small, gradual improvements. Think of it as like fine-tuning processes, fine-tuning policies, rather than completely overhauling them. You're looking at little pieces and snippets of it. This approach is often less disruptive because it allows organizations to make small changes to enhance productivity without causing major upheaval. For example, a company might implement a minor software update that revises a workflow gradually over time. It's not overhauling the entire system. On the other side, transformational change affects the entire organization. It is a significant impact. It reshapes in organizations, not only in operations, but the entire culture of the organization. A classic example would be if a company was merging with another, merging and acquisition, you have different systems. You need to have a complete realignment of strategies, goals, the workforce. These changes can be unsettling if they're not planned and strategized appropriately from a change management perspective. They can cause confusion, worry with the workforce. It can also cause downhill effects on productivity and ability to be able to manage operations. Plan change is something that we're anticipating. We are making a strategic decision to come into play and to initiate and push out this change. They're intentional, and they're usually done after a thorough analysis, forecasting aimed at improving that efficiency. An organization might plan to restructure its teams to better align with the strategic goals. They know the methodologies they're going to use, they know the timelines, they set milestones. It's predictable, it's a planned change. Emergent change is something that happens quickly. It is not necessarily planned, usually not. It's spontaneous. It arises from complex interactions within the organization. Think COVID. We were all going about our business in 2020, status quo, all of a sudden, bam, how do we do business in a remote world? How do we care for patients when we have this disease, this virus, something, we didn't even know what it was. What do we call it? How do we take care of patients when we're not even really sure what the treatment should be or how we should care for each other? So this type of emergent change could be from the external market. It could be internal dynamics that weren't anticipated. When you have a crisis, teams come together, they have to respond quickly. They're trying to innovate new ways to think, new ways to do, new ways to process. It highlights the importance of flexibility and being agile in an organization. For Project Elevate, this was a planned change. We had made a strategic decision to support the employee experience, support HR analytics to help operations. So we conducted extensive research. We evaluated various HR technology options. We had demos. We listened to the people. What do you find frustrating? What do you want to see? What's your wish list? We chose a system that aligned with those needs. The implementation and timeline was structured. We had clear, visible milestones, deliverables, project teams in place, and we'll talk about that when we get to employee buy-in. This was also a transformational change. Project Element wasn't just going to affect only HR, it was going to affect the way managers interacted with time and attendance and scheduling. It was going to affect the way leadership was able to pull performance management records. It was going to change the way employees interacted with new hire paperwork and the onboarding experience. So this was not just impacting one specific department, this was impacting the entire organization and system. It would revolutionize the way that we could pull data and run reports. We were excited to actually get data that was real from one place, not trying to mishmash Excel spreadsheets from different programs. It would change not only the tools and processes and the way we did things, but the company culture, promoting a more agile, ability, data-driven HR decisions. So understanding the dynamics of our change, that it was a planned transformational change, helped us to guide what is our strategy, gave us time to think about that. When you think about the business environment and the dynamics that are happening within your business, it's important to consider some specific areas when you're designing your change management strategy. What are the technological advancements in the space that you're in your current state? What do you want for your desired state? Companies that fail to integrate these new technologies, they risk becoming obsolete. Think about how fast technology has changed over the last, even 5 years, 1 year, 10 years. Every year there's something more. I think about smartphones. This was just something you saw in movies of a video on a phone, or being able to send instant messages to someone. Technology is changing, and businesses have to adopt these new ways of doing things so that they can remain competitive in the landscape. Think about businesses that adopted the cloud to be able to have a virtual place to store all the files and records. They had a competitive advantage over other companies who just house their files and their software locally. Think about how global competition has changed over the years. The marketplace is just no longer confined to the boundaries of your local community. Businesses have national boundaries, global boundaries. They're competing on a much larger scale. This intensifies the pressures to innovate and improve services continually. So change is going to happen. We have to be able to execute it successfully to be able to remain competitive. Think about how major brands have changed the way we do things. Think Amazon, for example. You can put something in your phone or on your computer and it's at your doorstep the next day. Who would have thought? Thinking differently about the way that we support our employees with a new system, or our customers with a new system, or our vendors with a new system. It's imperative to be able to stay competitive in the global market. The need for adaptability is imperative in that business dynamic landscape. Organizations have to remain flexible in their strategies and operations. You have to be able to pivot quickly. When we talk about change management, we're going to talk about the importance of constantly evaluating where we're at. What's working well? What's not working well? What's a barrier that we didn't anticipate that is decreasing productivity or becoming frustration for the end user? How we respond to that is so important in that business environment. You think about during the pandemic, COVID, again, changed the way we all work, the way we show up, the way we produce goods, services, etc. Businesses, organizations have had to pivot immediately to say, we can work remote with these specific roles. Or hospitals and healthcare had to say, we have to repurpose these employees that are non-essential areas, but we still need them, all boots on the ground here. So how do we pivot and use them in a different way? Thinking differently, not being stuck in this is the way we've always done it, but are we agile? Are we able to really rethink and imagine something different? The importance of change management in the business dynamics, you have to have buy-in from executives and leaders. We'll talk about that on the next slide, but it's crucial because if you don't have buy-in from the top down, you can meet resistance from employees. You can have hiccups in your transition. It is almost impossible to sustain a big change management project if you don't have the support of the leaders and you don't have the buy-in of the people. Last, thinking about talent acquisition challenges with today's business dynamics and the environment. Outdated systems can significantly hinder attracting top talent. We know that, we've seen it. The job market is tough. Again, I'm not just competing for my job here. I have people all around the United States, all around the globe, also competing for the same position because the work model has changed. Companies have to adopt contemporary solutions like AI-driven recruitment, AI-driven tools, streamlining their hiring processes, elevating their onboarding experience to make them more appealing to potential employees. All of these different business dynamics have to be considered when we're thinking about a change management strategy. How does what I'm doing when implementing this change affect these different areas within the business? So why change? Why do we have to change? Why is it important to do this and to develop this strategy? The internal drivers of change are critical because it really helps us understand and navigate how to implement the change. Let's talk about growth and restructuring. As markets evolve and organizations face new demands, it necessitates the need for a structured and intentional change. The adaptability, it's not just about survival. We don't want to just survive at the end of this. We actually want to have a successful change that is sustainable, that helps people remain engaged through the process, that actually improves the work environment, improves our ability to operate, increases our bottom line. You think about companies like Netflix, they saw a need to change and restructure because people didn't have DVD players anymore. They changed to a streaming platform. So they had to completely flip their business model so they could remain competitive in the landscape of entertainment. Another internal drivers of change is that process improvement. I see a gap. We need to figure out a way to fix it. Enhancing operational efficiency is essential for organizations, especially when we want to optimize what we have, maximize those strengths. This could mean adopting new technology. This could mean using technology to streamline workflows. This could mean implementing a system where it can integrate with your current system and help pull data better, provide information on employee metrics, reduce manual tasks. That process improvement drives us to want to make that change. Employee frustrations, I think that goes without saying. Have you ever been in a role where you go to do your job that should probably take 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 5 at the max, and it takes 15 or 20 because you have systems that don't work together, or you have manual processes. You are becoming dissatisfied, your productivity drops because you don't have access to the things that you need to do your job. Employees are more likely to buy into change when you can have a conversation with them that says, I see you, I hear you, I want to make you part of this process. You will help drive this change. It's amazing how you can start to get and see momentum whenever you're including employees in that conversation. Last, it is so important that we're aligning our company values with whatever change we're doing. Change initiatives should resonate within the core values of any organization. When change aligns with what the employees believe in, it enhances their experience and fosters a positive culture. So think about your change you need to implement. Does it support your core values? Does it support how you take care of your people or your workforce or your patients or your customers? That is what you want to lean into when you want to gain buy-in on this change. Those internal drivers are what's going to help you see success. Leadership and sponsorship is imperative when it comes to successful change management. It happens when leaders communicate a clear vision and inspire their teams. When leaders can articulate the goals, it fosters trust, which we know is the foundation of a pyramid of high engagement. It builds alignment within the organization. Think about this: when employees understand the direction and the purpose and the challenges and the successes and they see movement, they're more likely to engage actively in that process. So when you hear from an executive leader that they are promoting this and they're excited about this and they want to engage the employees in this change, you will see a natural excitement start to build within your workforce. So you have your leadership sponsor. You also want to have your executive sponsor or your program sponsor. Who's going to be the person that's going to champion this? This is the person that's in management that is backing the change initiative. They are making sure that we have the necessary resources when we need them, that timelines are being met, that the appropriate person is being assigned to the appropriate task. We're meeting those milestones. They are keeping the team on task from an executive level down. This committed sponsor can also make sure that if there are failures or gaps that occur in the process, they're in there providing the emotional support and trusting their team to say, yes, let's pivot, or we didn't anticipate this. How do we turn this around and make this a good thing and continue towards our goal of this implementation? Leadership also inspires confidence. When your team believes that you believe in them and they see it and they hear it and they feel it, it makes all the difference when it comes to successful change management. In Project Elevate, when leaders showed their visible commitment to the team, it instilled this confidence and encouraged buy-in immediately. We had champions over different departments that we would bring in on a regular basis and just, thank you. You are helping to change the way we do our work. You are helping the way that we can safely take care of our patients with this EMR upgrade. You are helping us to service our customers better by providing the input we need to make this the best customer management system. So providing the confidence in your team, continuing to encourage them to provide that feedback, helps them to embrace this rather than resist, because change is uncomfortable. Last, vision communication. And I'm going to talk about communication on this next slide, because how many of you have had a colleague engagement survey or a culture survey or any type of survey where you poll your workforce to say, what can we do better? I would guess that 99% of you have communication somewhere on there. That always tends to come up on any type of survey. People need communication. They want to know what's happening. They want to know when things are going well. They want to know when there's challenges. They want to know the why behind what we're doing so they can then buy in and understand. So clarity is key to engaging employees and securing their commitment. There are specific communication strategies that you can implement when you are thinking about developing your change management strategy. Some of the ones we used in Project Elevate that were very successful included building trust through transparency. We started at the very beginning and said, let us explain to you what we've been observing. We talked about, we understand that it is creating a bottleneck when you don't have access to the information that you need in a timely manner. We understand that the recruitment process is clunky and that the experience of our candidates is having a negative reflection on our employer brand. We understand that when you go to run data analytics to support your need for an FTE on the med-surg floor, you don't have the information you need in one place. It takes so much time to be able to put that together. You're telling them the why, you're bringing them along on the journey, you're facilitating transparent conversation so that they understand, as a result of this, we are going to start a project of implementing a new technology system called Project Elevate. Instead of just saying, hey, we're implementing this new system, and everyone's like, oh, great, another technology system, here we go. You are telling them the story. I've heard you, I see you, I'm excited for how this will make your life easier in the workforce. I'm excited about how this is going to increase our employer brand within the market. And this is what we're going to do. We had regular feedback sessions. We gave the team an opportunity throughout Project Elevate to say what's going well, what are barriers that we don't see that's happening, and how can we remediate this, stop or pivot, or what do we do differently? Your employees are the boots on the ground. They are the ones that are interfacing with this technology all the time. You want them to be able to give you this feedback now, early on in the project during this implementation phase, because you want to course correct it now. You don't want to learn 6 months after implementation that this button has never worked right, this link never takes us to where we need to be, or this data is not accurate, it's not pulling it from the right place. You want to know in real time, what can we do to make this the best investment for our team and for our organization. Regular updates are key. For Project Elevate, we had different modes of communicating with our team. We had a site on the intranet devoted just to, here's where we're at. Here's our milestone and goals for the next 30, 60, 90 days. Here's some things we want to ask you, because we need to listen to some feedback on this. Or we've actually paused for a brief time because we've encountered this hiccup. In the absence of no news, people create their own news. So making sure that you are being consistent in the way that you're communicating. Maybe it's different modes. Maybe it's not the intranet. Maybe it's a quick email or in a newsletter, or maybe it's in your department huddles that you're saying, we talked about this, 90 days ago. I want to tell you where we're at on this journey. So they know that the momentum continues behind the scene. They might not be intimately involved in it, but they know that it's happening and you're making progress. Employees, our greatest resource. At Compass, we are about the people. We know how important it is to leverage our employees as champions when it comes to change. thinking through what are my considerations during a change management project and strategy to make sure that my employees feel a part of it. Number one, during the planning phase, make sure you have employees participating in that. When employees participate in shaping that change process, they develop a sense of ownership and commitment. The buy-in is crucial because it makes the transition smoother. People are more likely to embrace the change if they've had a hand in creating it. They got to share what they thought about the old system, what they want to see in a new system. They got to see the demos. They got to see how it would work in real life, in action at their organization. When a team is part of the discussions about a new software implementation, they're more inclined to adopt it quickly because they understand the rationale behind the decision. So let's not have just all the executives making the decision and then we just share it out. Let's pull a few people from this department. Let's have people from over here. Let's have all different levels that will be interacting with this software come forward so they can help us make sure that this is a successful implementation and change management strategy. Next, making sure that you have comprehensive training is so important. You can have the most beautiful system. You can have a flawless implementation. All the data is accurate. Everything's perfect. But if you haven't trained the people that will actually be interacting with it every day to do it, it's going to be very tough to sustain that. Technology is part of our everyday life, so we need to make sure that our team feels comfortable and that we are excited about it. We're going to make sure they're equipped with the knowledge, the skills, the abilities to be able to operate it, to be able to leverage it and use it. I was supporting a client that had implemented a beautiful new system, full suite, everything, all the bells and whistles. I meet with them, and this is 2 years after the implementation, and I'm, how's it going? Tell me about it. I'm excited to hear about it. I know how much work you put into it. They said, we're not using it. We're not using it. Nobody knows how to use it. It didn't sustain. We just have it. It just sits there. At this point, it's just like a glorified file cabinet. We put information in there occasionally, but we can't extract the data. We're not using it for time and attendance or scheduling or any of our benefit open enrollment. It just sits there. Don't let that happen. Make sure during that planning phase for change management, you have considered, how can I appropriately equip my team to be able to leverage the technology? What do I need to do to help them feel comfortable in this new space? Who should champion this? Pick your super champions, your biggest cheerleaders of the department, and train them as super users and let them stand alongside their team and help them through that. When employees feel prepared, they feel comfortable, their productivity is going to be, out there. It's going to be off the charts. When they feel disengaged, uncomfortable, anxious, anxiety ridden, we see what that does to our overall engagement and productivity. It tanks. So think about, what does the training look like with this new system? Last, encourage that continuous feedback. Regular check-ins and feedback loops allow organizations to identify concerns early on. The proactive approach, we talked about it earlier. We don't like surprises. We want to know at the beginning what's not working. It enables us to make timely adjustments. We can say, heard you, let's try this and do this a little bit differently. Or thank you for bringing that to my attention. Let's go about it this way. Or how can we leverage what we have to be able to get what we need out of it? For example, when we did Project Elevate, we had regular weekly check-ins with our main team, but we had monthly check-ins with our super users to say, we've pushed out this new part of this, or we'd like for you to test this out, and we want the good, bad, and the ugly. Tell us now. This is way before we even implement it, across the entire organization. What's working? Employees are, again, they're on the front line. They're the ones that are actually going to be working. They can provide that knowledge firsthand. What do those check-ins look like, and how do you encourage that feedback? Important piece of change management that often gets overlooked is the monitoring and the evaluation. You've done the work, you've done, a year-long planning, you've got all the data in the system, it's working beautifully, we're done, right? Like, finished? No, actually not. We need to constantly be monitoring to make sure that Is it doing what it needs to be doing? Are we leveraging all the tools that we should? Are we actually inputting information appropriately, using it the way we should? How to do that? Set KPIs, key performance indicators, set goals that will help you establish clear guidelines on what are the metrics that we need. What are the metrics that can serve as the roadmap so that we are tracking the progress of the project, tracking the implementation of the change initiative? Are we actually spending the time where we need to spend our time, or have we veered off track? So setting clear goals, metrics around what do we need done so that you are holding yourself and others accountable that are on that project team. Consistent ongoing assessment. Regular monitoring is vital so that you can sustain the change. Constantly checking in, hey, would love to hear your feedback on, you've been working on the system now for 90 days. What do you think about it? Are there things that we haven't considered? Are there changes we can make to make your life easier to be able to have access to the information that you need? If we notice we're off course, we can correct our path, not be 2 years down the line and saying, we've never used it. It's a glorified file cabinet. Change management strategy is effective when we can respond timely and be proactive on it. It is not just a one and done. Change management requires time, constantly evaluation and refinement, and you need to have feedback mechanisms established to get that information. It's like pushing out an engagement survey and saying, we want to hear your voice. People take time to fill it out. Leadership gets it. You never hear anything else about it. You don't know what it said. You don't know if there's action plans. You don't know what the next steps are. Same thing with change management. Take the feedback and then share, this is what we're doing. This is what we heard. This is our action plan to remediate this. Or also, this is not something that we can address at this moment. It's okay to say no when it comes to feedback. You take it in and have the ability to respond to your team so they know, again, that they're being heard, they're being valued, and you have a response to that. So, successful change management. How did Project Elevate turn out? Great. I will tell you that it was longer than we anticipated, so bake in some extra time. But the key was, why was it important to the organization? Did we explain the why? Did we listen to our team? What kind of benefits did we have after we were able to implement this? We saw increased employee satisfaction. From our metric we established for our KPIs on our engagement survey, there was a specific question. I have the tools and technology I need to do my job. We saw that score increase. That's a measurable data point that we could show that our change management process and implementation was successful. We had a competitive advantage. Our systems started at the very beginning of the employee life cycle. So our front-facing employer brand, our ability to recruit, it was a streamlined process. It was more efficient. Our response times increased. We positioned ourselves to have a competitive advantage in that landscape because of the technology that we implemented. We were able to improve organizational performance. It's amazing how much more efficient employees can be when they have access to the tools they need to do their job. Sounds very simple, but when they can access things more quickly, they are bought into the change, they're excited about it, productivity increases. You can measure that. Again, that's a measurable metric that you can look at. We saw enhanced employee experience. It wasn't just about, oh, HR team, good job. It was about, I'm in this department and I can now access all my payroll records because I have self-service. Or I can actually go in and request my PTO in the scheduling system and know what my next shift is, or where I need to adjust my schedule because I have something coming up that's going to interfere with my regular hours. So people had access to what they needed, which enhanced that employee experience. It helped us to minimize disruptions. When we had a solid change management plan, our disruptions were minimized because we were being proactive in our approach. Again, you can have this beautiful idea to implement this beautiful system, but if you don't have a clear strategy in place, it can be very disruptive to the business. Thinking through, how does turning this on impact, finance's ability to be able to run payroll? Or how does, me pulling the system down to work on time and attendance, How does that affect the manager's ability to be able to put in their employee call-offs or PTO? So understanding holistically how that change happens can minimize disruptions to the organization. It allows the company to maintain productivity levels without significant interruptions. Final thoughts on change management. That effective strategy is the most important piece, is that getting aligned with a partner that's been through that, whether it's internal or external. How can I align myself to make sure that I've thought of all the things to consider before we implement this change? Acknowledging the change needs to happen. Recognizing that change is constant. We're right when you get done with one big project, you're already thinking about the next one that's going to happen. When we accept this reality, we can develop proactive strategies instead of reactive ones, allowing our teams to stay ahead of that curve. Developing that strategy reduces resistance among team members. You're laying out a clear roadmap with timelines for how the change will be implemented. It automatically calms us. When change happens, it can really elevate things. The uncertainty of it is uncomfortable. But when we have expectations laid out, we have consistent communication, open communication from our leadership team, we have the ability to say, okay, I can do this. I am going to support this. I understand the why behind it. I know what's going to happen. I understand the impact on my role. So I'm going to see this through. Open communication, I will just say something we like to say at Compass is, only as leaders, when we get tired of saying it, do people start to hear it. It's one of those things of, you think you said it a million times, keep saying it, because that open communication will resonate with someone even when you're tired of saying it. Lastly, invest in that training and monitor and adapt. Make sure you're thinking about, what do we do afterwards? How do we sustain this? How do we make sure that our team is equipped with the tools necessary to be able to push the resources forward? And what are we going to do to monitor this change? What are the metrics that we're going to look at? Who's the person in charge that needs to be having an eye on this, on a standing agenda, to say, here's where we're at. We're 30 days since go live. Here's the hiccups, or here's the barriers. Here's how we're rectifying this, or here's what we need to think of differently. So constantly monitoring so that you can adapt if something needs to be done. I'll pause there. Thank you so much for listening. I love strategy. I love to work with leaders on how we make sure that the voice of the people are supported through these big changes. So I hope that you took something out of this today that you can apply to your role. Would love to open it up now to see if there's any questions.
So if you guys have any questions for Melissa, please feel free to put it in the chat, as well as if you think of something later, there's an email on this slide here, so you can take that email down. You're going to be getting a recording anyways, so you'll be able to access that email at any time. But I'd like to thank Melissa so much for such a great, thorough presentation. And we'll just give you guys a couple more minutes to drop any questions you have. Oh, I think there's one. What challenges did you face that you didn't plan for? Was there any examples, Melissa, for any of the clients you've worked with that something completely unexpected came up and then maybe you've added it to your now planning process?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we did the big implementation across the health system, there's many different locations, and you try to equip yourself with as much knowledge at the beginning to understand. Send me all your policies and procedures. What is your cultural norms for time and attendance? What is your grace period for clocking in? What access do you give people? So you try to learn, because we were trying to standardize. What we didn't take into account as, if there is a policy or procedure written for something, it doesn't mean it's actually happening in real life. So what I would suggest you do is, it's not just about doing your due diligence on documents. Schedule verbal touch points with stakeholders at each location to understand what is their current state, because it might be very different than what's actually documented. And that will change the way that you approach the change management strategy.
I think that's a really great point. There's often something that everyone says they should be doing, but it's not actually being done. That's pretty common, especially in really large organizations.
Hmm.
Procedures that should be followed maybe sometimes aren't just because they don't work. So really
Hmm.
understanding what's currently actually happening, in this case with how attendance is being tracked or how people are clocking in and out of their shifts. Um, I could see that being a huge game changer in implementing a new technology that might just be doing that exact thing.
Hmm.
Um, any other questions, you can just drop in the chat. We'll just give you a minute and then we can give you back 15 minutes for the rest of your, I'm sure, very busy working day.
Hmm. Thank you so much for having me, Cassandra. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, you can see our website, wearecompass.com, info@wearecompass.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to connect with other professionals in the world that are passionate about people. And reach out if you have any questions or need to partner with us on anything that's people related. We say anything that touches the person or the employee, we love to work with. So anytime we can help just facilitate a conversation, would love to reach out.
All right, and with that, I'm just double checking. Yep, we have no more questions. So thanks again, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.